Hey guys, this is Casey Ferris. Thanks for checking out another one of my videos. Really appreciate it. Today I want to give you some of my top tips for color grading aerial shots. That's anything shot from a drone or even a helicopter. It all kind of works the same. And some of these tips will apply to just about any type of footage. So let's jump in. My first tip, now this starts before you even get the footage. Okay, this is like a production tip. And if you don't follow this, you're going to be up a creek without a paddle. And I'm not even joking. It's going to be really, really hard to grade your footage if you don't follow this. It's a really good idea not to fly your drone as fast as it can go into power lines and have it explode like I did. Because when those smoldering pieces are falling from the sky, it's going to be really hard to capture the right dynamic range with the camera. But luckily for you guys, there was a bystander that caught the whole incident on tape. Yeah. So yeah, make sure you look where you're going, because drone versus power lines win. So yeah, that's tip number one. Might seem obvious, but wasn't too obvious to me. So on to color grading. First of all, I'd like to thank Daniel Cerny and Andrew Hughes for providing some of this awesome footage for us to be looking at today. It's a huge help to me. Thank you guys. First color grading tip, you want to shoot really, really flat. This is something that's pretty universal for any type of camera, but the idea is if you can shoot in a log profile that makes the footage really, really flat, it increases the dynamic range, which means that you can see details in the shadows and you can also see details in the brighter areas like the clouds. And even though it looks ugly when you shoot it, when you color grade, you're going to get a lot better results. So shoot really flat. Both of these clips, I believe, are shot on the Phantom 3 in a log profile. You can set that under your color settings in the DJI app. I'd also recommend using a custom profile and turn down the contrast, saturation, and sharpening. That's going to give you the best starting point so that you can have the most control later with your color grades. So we shot a whole bunch of flat footage. That's awesome. Let's go to our next tip, which is how to actually make it look good. The first step in color grading aerial footage, as well as just about any type of footage, is you want to make blacks black and whites white. So I'm going to bring up my scopes. Here we see our flat footage. Pretty much everything is lifted above 128, and not a whole lot in the image is brighter than 768. And so the idea is to get this top part of the graph up to the top of the scope and the bottom part to the bottom, because this is white, this is black. So we want to see if there's anything that's actually supposed to be black. These t-shirts should probably be black. These windows should probably be black. Maybe some of these shadows down here should be black. We do have some things that need to be black in this shot. So I'm going to go to my lift wheel and I'm going to start rolling down on my mouse until this waveform starts to come a little bit closer to 0. Now, I don't want to crush this out because I'm going to start losing detail in the shadows. I want to just bring it down to where the little tiny parts are starting to touch, because there's not tons and tons of black. So I might even bring this up just a little bit as a starting point. You can always tweak it in a couple minutes if you decide it's wrong. So that's pretty good for our blacks. I also want to make sure that they're balanced. Now, when you have drone shots, the white balance is going to be pretty close because a lot of these little drones shoot in auto white balance. And so these blacks, if we bring up our scope, I'll make it a little bigger here. You see our blacks are relatively level. You know, sometimes you can get a color cast where you'll have blue shadows, but this looks pretty good, so I think I'm going to call it okay for now. Now I want to set my whites, and this is where I'm definitely going to want to start scrubbing through this footage. In fact, you should really scrub through your footage before you even start color grading. That's something I find myself not doing enough. Maybe the first part of the shot is dark and then it comes out into a brighter environment, or it changed, or the lighting changes or something. So you want to make sure you scrub through the whole thing. This is actually pretty consistent. I think I still like my black levels, but I am going to brighten this up a little bit. One thing is right here, we have some clipped out detail. We can look on our scopes and this part is kind of flattened out. That means that there's no more information right here. And for that to actually look correct, that needs to be pretty close to white, or else it's gonna, see, if we take this down, it's just gonna look weird because your eyes are gonna look at it and go, oh wow, there should be detail there because it's not that bright, yet there isn't. And so it kind of throws you off. So you want to make sure that anything that's clipped out is pretty darn close to white, because, you know, it should be. I mean, if it's bright enough to clip things out, then it should be bright. So I'm gonna push this up just gingerly here. I don't want to go crazy. I just want to bring that up to a point where I'm not losing anything, but things are as bright as they should be. I might just go a little bit past it just to be safe. And so now we have our bright clouds right here with the sun behind them, as bright as they can be. We have our darkest parts as dark as they should be. I'd say white balance probably looks okay for now. I'm going to start saturating this, so I'm going to push the saturation up quite a bit. So now the saturation is at 100, and on my computer monitor, it looks a little bit crazy. On my external monitor, it actually doesn't look too bad. And that's the one I trust most of the time, but I think, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'll take this down just a little, just so it's tasteful. And that still looks okay on my external, so we'll call that good. I have my black set, my white set. White balance looks okay. I think that's a pretty nice looking shot for the most part. I might boost up my midtones just a little bit just to see what it's like. And I'm going to do that in a different node. So I'm going to label this node. I'm going to call this primary. That's our first correction. And I'll hit Alt-S to add a new node. And let's just push up our gammas and see what happens here. I'll have to push my lift down again to compensate. Let's do it before and after. Yeah, I definitely like it with the midtones up. And because I push the midtones up, I might just push the saturation up a little more. Pretty much anytime you change one thing color grading, you're gonna have to tweak other stuff to compensate for it. Now, just as a reminder of where we were, I'm gonna hit Shift D, and that's gonna take off all of my grading. So this is before, this is our really flat log footage, and this is our grade. So that looks pretty good for an overall correction. Blacks are black, whites are white. Haven't really added any style, it just looks real, it looks pleasing. So now let's say I want to add some style. One of the easiest ways to make an aerial shot look better is to add a gradient or two. And this is pretty much true with any wide shot, especially exterior shots. So let's play around with a couple of gradients and see what we can do. I'm going to label this midtones. And I'm going to make a new node by hitting Alt-S. This is just a serial node. I'll bring this down. And let's go over to our windows here. And I'll go down to gradient. Now, if you're unfamiliar with a gradient, here's how it works. I'm just going to push this really pink so we can see what this is doing. We have our line. This is where the gradient starts, and then it fades out along this arrow. So I can adjust this arrow to adjust the softness of the gradient as well as the direction. And one thing I really like to do is add a gradient on the sky. So I'm going to push this up here and soften it out until it hits the ground. And we'll just try something simple. I'm going to take my gammas down. I'm just going to roll down on my gamma slider here. And I'm just going to roll it down quite a bit. I find when you're doing sky gradients, you can go pretty darn crazy and people will just accept it. And so I'm just going to take this down to a point that's obnoxious and go back and forth. And the good thing is the sky doesn't really move up and down that much. You see the clouds are right here in the frame, and as it plays, they don't move up and down, they just move side to side, which is really convenient because we don't have to do much for our gradient. We can just keep the gradient how it is. And so that gives the sky a lot more character, brings out the blue for sure. So here's before and after. This is how it was. And that's with the really dark sky. And like I said, I went crazy with that gradient. I took the gamma all the way down in the sky, and it still looks pretty decent. It doesn't look like I just got all jacked up on sugar and like messed up my image like a psycho. So it's nice to know that I can take it that far. But what I might do is just see what it looks like, kind of splitting the difference. The easiest way to do that is go to my key tab with my gradient node selected, go down to key output, and I can just bring this gain down. And that's pretty much the opacity of the node. And so I can kind of dial this sky in to what I think is right. So maybe I'll take it about 76% or so. Yeah, I like that. Kind of gives it a nice evening vibe. We have a good looking shot here, and we haven't even really stylized it. Now, if we wanted to add some style, maybe I'll add another node here and I'll just warm up my gamma a little bit. just a little. That gives it that nice sunset feeling. It's really subtle. I just barely move that wheel, but it kind of warms up those midtones, makes it look really nice. So that's an example of some nice subtle things that you could do to an aerial shot. So let's go to our next shot. Nice little orbit around this lighthouse. Now on this shot, instead of doing it manually, I'm going to use a LUT. So what I'm going to do is make a new node, and I'm going to call this LUT. Now, if you're unfamiliar with LUTs, it's kind of like a preset or a filter that you can put on an image. It works in DaVinci Resolve, in Premiere, in Media Encoder, there's a way to use a LUT in just about any program that works with images. So I'm going to right click and go to 3D LUT, and I'm going to select a LUT that we just came out with at ground control called GC Falcon DJI Log 2709. And you can already see this is a big difference that this makes. Now this is what some people would call a utility LUT or a transform LUT. And what it does is it makes this flat, ugly log footage look good. It basically does what we did in this first shot, which means it tries to set your contrast, your black levels, your white levels, and your saturation, so that in just a couple of seconds you have a really good starting point for your grade. This is especially convenient if you have tons and tons of shots that are all shot on a drone and you don't want to go through each shot and set your black levels, set your white levels, set your saturation, set your contrast, and all that stuff. And this particular LUT is available right now at groundcontrolcolor.com. Just click on free LUTs up here, and right here at the top, free DJI Log to Rec 709 LUT. Sign up with your name and email and you can download it for free. And this is a sample from our brand new Falcon LUTs, which is a collection of stylistic LUTs that are made specifically for DJI Phantom 3 and Inspire 1 footage. If you shoot with Phantom 3 or Inspire 1, definitely go check those out. So we put this transform LUT over our shot and it does a pretty good job. But what I'm going to do is go into my first node here, and I'm going to label this tweaks. And I'm going to fix anything that the LUT didn't quite get right, because there is no perfect LUT. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if I have any information here in my lighthouse, because it looks like this is blown out, but it could be something that the LUT's doing. So I just want to double check. And it looks like there's maybe some information there, but it's pretty much blown out. One thing I might be able to do is fake some detail here. So I'm going to move my LUT over, and I'm going to make a new node, and I'm going to zoom into my lighthouse and just see if there's maybe a trick I can do. I'll go to my custom curves, and I'm going to bring them down a little bit like this. Just see if I can get a little bit more contrast here in this lighthouse. Even though there isn't much more detail, it does look a little better. So that definitely looks better, especially here on the roof. So what I'll do is make a window here. What I might do too is limit this with a key. So I'll turn off my hue and my saturation and just bring up my luminance. So I'm not getting that land quite as much. Bring it in until it starts going crazy. So there. And I'll soften it out. Something like that. Might even blur it a bit. Clean the white, clean the black. And let's see what it looks like before and after. So that's before, that's after. And we're not messing with the stuff around it. So I'm going to track my window by hitting Control T. That's going to track forward. I'm going to go back here and hit Alt T to track backwards. There I have a better looking lighthouse. Even though it was clipped out, it definitely looks better than it did. And I think I'm going to do a really soft vignette just to bring some attention to this lighthouse here. Make a circle and scale it up a lot and feather it out a lot. And I'll bring my gamma down. And I'll switch this to use the outside of the circle. Just bring the gamma down a little bit. Here we have before and after. And I might not even need to track this. Let's look. So I'm just looking to see if I notice a circle shape. And I don't. I think it looks pretty good. I mean, I could track it if I want, but it's all right. Don't need to. I just go back to my original tweaks here and maybe just pump the saturation just a little. But the LUT did a pretty good job of setting the exposure and the saturation. And here's everything I did without the LUT. And here it is with the LUT on top of it. Now, if I want to add even more style to this, I can use one of the LUTs from the Falcon pack. So I'll right click on my LUT, And instead of using this transform LUT, what I'm going to do is find the log versions of these LUTs, and I can go through here and find some different styles. And because these are designed to work with this type of footage, most of them will look pretty good right off the bat. It's kind of a cool desaturated look. Maybe I'll use this LUT called Enchanted. That gives it a nice tealish look. So there's a few tips for color grading aerial shots. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you like this, make sure to hit like. And of course, for more post-production and color grading tutorials, make sure to subscribe to my channel on YouTube using your computer or phone or other device. And if you find yourself color grading drone shots, make sure to check out the Falcon LUTs from Ground Control. They're pretty sweet. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name's Casey Ferris. I'll catch you next time.